C2 Wrestling. The boys are back. Monday Night Raw has wrapped up. Subscribe or you're a coward. Subscribe or I hate you. I don't know what else. CTD Snowden. I'm back home.
For
Monday Night
now.
Raw. Freshened up. I mean, it's not to the level of SmackDown changes,
hmm
but the show top to bottom, so much better
Yeah.
than weeks past. So much to get into. Where do you want to start?
Well, I got to start by asking you, I don't know if you know this, but Raw has tag titles.
It does?
They do. If you didn't know, you should by watching tonight because they changed hands. We're gonna skip around a little bit. I feel like that's pretty big to get into because they didn't have tag titles for the last couple months. What was the statistic? July was the last Raw tag title defense, but Finn Balor and JD lose the tag titles to AJ Lee, a little bit of a thrown together tag team, which I'm usually not the biggest fan of, but it is AJ Styles and Dragon Lee, somebody people have been fucking begging to get on TV, who's been on TV every week outside of having a kid. So, like, I don't know what people are complaining about to begin with, but whatever. Regardless, it was to a point with those tag titles that you could have put them on anybody just to freshen it up, get some new faces, get the belts on TV, new feuds going down. Very happy they put the tag belts on Styles and Lee.
Match was so good, had Nate Diaz smiling ear to ear in the
Yeah,
crowd. I was like,
yeah,
wow, that's you got Nate smiling. I would have assumed that he'd be just stone faced looking at that.
yeah.
Shout out Nate. Uh, the match was awesome. And it was
Yes.
almost I almost was like frustrated watching it. Like I almost don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, but I almost got annoyed. Like we could be getting this every week.
Every week.
We could be
hmm
getting this with so many people on this roster.
hmm Yeah, there's a lot of tag teams to go around between both rosters, which we talk all the time, like Raw tag division, SmackDown tag division. There's no real brand split right now. They can do whatever the hell they want. So you can get any of these tag teams involved on Monday Night Raw. I'm hoping they do. I think this is the larger leg, though, of the eventual downfall of the Judgment Day. We did also have Dom retain his IC title against Rusev. We'll get into that in a little bit too. But I think it's all a bigger picture about Judgment Day more than it is the tag titles, which great. If the tag titles aren't really going to be involved in that end game storyline with Judgment Day, get them the fuck off the Judgment Day. Put them elsewhere. Get them involved with Styles and Lee and fucking Bate and Dunn, Grande and whoever the hell else you want, Raw is definitely fresh, maybe not as fresh as SmackDown, as you said, but Raw might get some new names coming pretty soon as well. So there could still be more to come. But regardless, just switching over those tag titles alone does so much for Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, I immediately start thinking about let's get the Creed Bros back in action. Like we can't
Absolutely.
have them just still waiting for Gable to come back. Like don't get me wrong, them and Gable's an awesome pairing.
Didn't Gable tell them and Ivy Nile like
Yeah,
before he left, like you guys better be involved and win
yeah,
gold, and they have just been feet up in catering ever
yeah.
since.
They're like, yeah, Chad's not here, so what's what's the worry? Like get them going. Do a
Absolutely.
couple week or month feud with the Creed Bros and AJ Styles and Dragon Lee, AJ Lee, whatever the hell they're gonna end up calling them. Let's get some teams actually going here, and hell, maybe make some new teams. I don't know, just do something, and that seems to be the start of it. There is something else with the Judgment Day that I want to get into when we get to the Battle Royal, but I'll leave that little teaser as it is, and we'll switch to Dom, as you mentioned, defending against Rusev. Kind of expected. We get the Penta interference. We were texting earlier in the day. We were talking about Survivor Series. And I'm not going to lie, I sometimes forget, calendar wise, you get busy, whatever. Oh, Saturday night's main event is right around the corner. I was saying, oh, Dom, Penta, Rusev, triple threat, Survivor Series, all for it. That's probably the match at Saturday night's main event. And then we get the rumored John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio match at Survivor Series.
I mean, that's how it should be too. All this like online hype and talk about it being for the IC title potentially. I mean, the match itself is all rumored, so who knows? But reasonable, especially considering it is also in San Diego. So lines up. It doesn't need the IC title. Dom, if he were to retain, say, against that triple threat of Rusev and Penta, I'm not even necessarily opposed to that. But I think the IC title finds itself in a similar boat as the tag titles right now. Why not get it off of Dom, put it on a guy like Penta? Penta and Rusev can feud, Penta and whoever can feud, Rusev and whoever. Doesn't really matter, but that Penta win would be huge. Saturday night's main event, November 1st, I think. It is creeping up sooner rather than later. It's there's been good ones, there's been mediocre ones, there's been great matches, there's been bad matches, like Saturday night's main event, they do need one or two big things to happen at this one to further hype up the John Cena retirement Saturday night's main event. I think they're also kind of screwing themselves a little bit because no Saturday night's main event is ever going to top the John Cena one. They're capping themselves by doing it at Saturday night's main event. So I almost think like throughout the years, it could be the downfall of that as an event that they'll never see numbers like that again. There's going to be a great showing for the John Cena retirement Saturday night's main event, but why not help the case and not only have a world title match, but have the IC title change hands at the Saturday night's main event prior as well. Frees up Dom, like you said, for Survivor Series, can move the IC title into a bunch of new things. I think it makes sense.
It's so funny because I'm on board with that. Then at the same time, you just hear the reactions Dom gets, and you're like, you can't take the fucking title off of him.
I know.
Like,
That's the problem.
it's so tough.
He's so good. He still is young though too. Like I'm not saying he's going to lose this title, lose the mega championship, and then go on and be world champion. He could be a guy that gets 5 or 6 IC title runs before he even moves on to that big main title. I don't think that would hurt him at all. I think that would only help. I can see a world where he ends up winning the title back down the line. I don't know. Maybe he fucking beats John Cena. You never know. Maybe there's some screwy Eddie Guerrero type finish. He ends up beating Cena. I don't necessarily predict it, but that would put him up a level, number one contender for something again. Again, though, there's a story to be told over the next couple months past Survivor Series with Dom, Finn, Judgment Day, all them involved. They might even get involved at Survivor Series to help or hurt Dom, who knows? But he is so over, man. He's so good. There's so much like internet hate towards individuals at times, and it comes and it goes. There's not one person hating on Dom, saying Dom sucks, this sucks, he sucks, the run sucks. He is all around one of the best things in the company.
He's also like the prime example of you just can't write someone off when they're like 21 years old. like
Yeah, yeah.
like the world was against Dom.
Hmm.
And don't get me wrong, Vince wasn't doing him any favors with his original, as white meat baby face as it gets. That heel turn was needed so bad, and it truly skyrocketed his career. But you can't rush someone who's in their early 20s because look at him now, obviously. He gets one of the biggest reactions every single show. Used to be nuclear boos. Now it's like nuclear cheers, even though he's still a heel. Uh, there is another part about Dom that I want to get into when we dive a little bit deeper into the Battle Royal. But we'll talk about pretty much what the show was structured around now. The opening and closing of the show, the World Heavyweight Championship. We have Adam Pearce opens the show. He basically is going to address the world title. We see Paul Heyman, Bron Breakker, and Bronson Reed roll up in a car. They come into the ring, and it is announced Seth Rollins is stripped. He has injuries. He's going to miss a long period of time. Adam Pearce asks for the world title. Bron Breakker makes him say please. He says please. They give up the title. A little bit later in the show, Adam Pearce pulls Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed from the Battle Royal. Before we get to the Battle Royal itself, what are your thoughts on them pulling Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed from the match itself?
I think that's the right move. I absolutely think that's the right move. I don't want to say you can't, but both of those guys getting eliminated in the match, it would have to have been, everybody versus the two of them type moment to eliminate them. I don't think they needed that. Listen, I know Bron is like ready, Bronson's ready, but it's all about timing, the right place, the right time. Saturday night's main event, Bron's big first title win. It just doesn't click there and then for me. I think there's a story to be told where you can prolong it and put that belt on somebody else, and then you have Braun beat that person perhaps down the line for the world championship. Uh, I'm okay with it. I think that's the best thing they could have done realistically is pulled them from the battle royal. I We were texting a little bit about this during the day too. If this was like the Vince era, Vince would have been like, well, I mean, he took the title, so he's champion now,
Yeah.
And it would have been as simple as that. Braun Breaker would have been world champion. I'm very glad they didn't go some route like that. But I was thinking if they were in it, it's pretty likely Braun Breaker wins it. And then him versus Punk, he could win against Punk. I guess Punk could still win, but I want them to push it out, prolong the Braun Breaker title win for a little bit.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, if they're in the battle royal, they got to get eliminated by someone. On top of that, they're at a point right now. Rollins is out, so they're not going to have a story with Rollins. So you think whoever eliminates them is going to be their next feud. And you kind of have an idea who it is, probably CM Punk, but you don't want some random or like a Jey Uso or a Jimmy Uso to be the one to eliminate him when they've been telling that story for months now. That doesn't really do anything. It doesn't get them anywhere. Then if it's a fresh face, say AJ Styles eliminates him. It's like, well, now they kind of have to feud with AJ on top of all of this.
For the
See,
tag titles, that might not have been that bad, actually.
that is true. So you have to kind of pull them from the match. How do you do it? You're not going to have anyone attack them because
Hmm.
again, you're setting up a story for, a different rivalry. You're not going to do that. You're not going to have them like lose their spot in a matchup or an injury angle or whatever. So how else do you do it? You just have the GM be like, you know what? No. You want to be a dick? I'm the general manager. It felt like one of the first times in a while. It was like, oh, the GM actually has authority to do things. Because half the time you watch these shows and it's just like the wrestlers make the matches for them and then the GMs come out and they're like, yeah, great idea. This is a match. Like, or like, a wrestler says something and they're like, oh, yeah, good idea. You're going one on one with this person now. This felt like a genuine, like, all right, the GMs have power. We can get into that point where you do something the GM doesn't like. Well, you didn't earn this, so you're not in the match.
Yeah, I agree. The only maybe small touch I would have liked is, it's just the age we live in, kind of. We all know where, when, and how Seth got hurt here. We all know he's legitimately hurt here. This is not some ploy. Uh, I would have liked to see them kind of play it off just in a sense of like, you guys are the vision. You three were the only three that knew Seth was hurt from the match with Cody, and you still did what you did. You don't deserve it, blah, blah, blah. Kind of playing it off like Braun and Bronson did the damage to Seth, off of the one spear and tsunami, which are the two most deadly moves in wrestling right now. So I guess there's some credibility there. But I would have liked them to play into the fact that, we know how Seth got hurt a little bit. Uh, it is the best thing they could have done, though. Again, I'm glad they got pulled from the battle royal. Prolong it a little bit. There's a bigger story to be told. Some quick booking, I guess, is going on with the Seth injury. So they're really kind of scrambling to get something to work here, which makes me happy that they didn't just pull the trigger. They easily could have just had fucking, let alone him just being champion for taking the belt. They could have had the match tonight, and then somebody defend us on this main event. I'm glad they're kind of slow rolling it a little bit.
I'm glad you mentioned the quick booking. I thought this show was so clear that last Monday's show was like the quick, all right, we just need a quick pivot. Let's set us up here because the injury happens on Saturday. Raw's on Monday. So you only have not even 24 hours given Rollins' injury. Who knows? Maybe you're saying, oh, give it a day, whatever. This, it felt like they were like, all right, we have all week. Let's try to think this through. Even though Heyman kind of played it off that he didn't know, let's roll with Heyman knew this and Heyman was a part of this. Let's roll with that, even though Braun Breaker was like asking Bronson Reed, him or me, let's roll with Bronson Reed knew this was the plan. Like let's form this story that the three of them together actually came up with this. It was all a ruse as they would say. It was clear they took that time, and it was even more clear when it came to Becky Lynch's backstage segment with Paul Heyman. Now, Becky earlier in the night gets DQ'd in her match against Maxine Dupree. That story's obviously prolonging. Becky obviously is not a part of the vision, even though she kind of joined, kind of didn't join. I know, like, this is the biggest win for you that
Yes.
she's out.
Yes.
Uh, I thought it was a fantastic promo from her backstage. It also was that nice blend of Becky is a heel, Rollins is still technically a heel, but another heel has done him wrong, and you can start kind of telling a story that Rollins isn't that dumb. Rollins knew this day would come, and he thought it would happen sooner. And he's, whatever. They tell the story in the promo. It felt like, as a fan, this past week, they were like, all right, we just did this big move. Let's try to make sense of this all. Let's try to connect some dots. Let's try to tie up some loose ends on this story. And, you know, all right, Becky was kind of a part of it. We need to have Becky confront Paul. And Paul was, seemed confused. We need to, lock it down that Paul is with these guys. They're the future, blah, blah, blah. That was like the most enjoyable part about all of this, where now it feels I can kind of move on with the vision and Seth Rollins isn't that focus anymore, and their turn isn't really that focus anymore. It's this is the group, it's them three. They're gonna be going for the world title, intercontinental title, whatever tag titles. They're the future. This is the way with them. Everything is kind of fresh from here on out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is very forward thinking, but we had discussed this a little bit too. When Seth does come back, it's going to be electric. I hope he doesn't come back as a babyface or, gradually go into that role. He's been a great heel. I think Braun and Bronson have this ability right now to, over the course of however long Seth is out, it might be like Dirty Dom. They might be so good that they are gradually getting cheers, and maybe there's some weird double pull they can pull when Seth comes back and he's still a heel, but Braun and Bronson got so organically over that people are cheering them. But there's a lot of time in between. I'm glad that they're kind of quickly transferring it to just the story of Braun and Bronson now. Seth is hurt. How many weeks can they really just mention Seth? We get it. He's out. He's hurt. They attacked him. Let's kind of just move it along from there. Let's kind of also let the people forget about it, even though it's going to be months probably. The quicker we forget about it, the more electric that eventual return will kind of be. I still am a little indifferent on what you do. Like it really is tough because both these guys are so goddamn good. I don't want them feuding with each other, of course. They're still a team, a faction. They've been booked to a point where they're above the tag titles now, really, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense for them to get those. But I would have loved that accolade for both of them to be tag champions together. I guess there's still a world where another member gets added. Who knows? That's maybe wishful thinking at this point, even too. But it all depends on post Saturday night's main event. That's really the bigger picture. And we got the final picture of that main event tonight with a battle royal that was announced during the opening segment with Adam Pearce and the Vision. Battle Royal, number one contender for the championship, takes on CM Punk November 1st at Saturday night's main event. And none other than Jey Uso gets the win. I'm a little indifferent on it. I'm not thrilled with Jay getting the win here over LA Knight. I think there was a different story to be told with LA. I think you there's clearly a direction with Jay and Jimmy right now. And I don't think Jay winning this battle royal and going on to win or lose that championship match like helps that story any more than it could have if LA won the battle royal, if that makes sense. I think LA winning and going on to take on Punk, it just levels up LA a little bit. I think it adds a little bit more of like who's going to win the championship. It feels pretty clear though. CM Punk's about to be our world heavyweight champion.
See, I agree and disagree. I disagree in this not really being the extra help to the Jimmy story. I think this is actually going to elevate it even further because you had Jay eliminate Jimmy going for the world
Sure.
title. Ultimately, in my opinion, he is going to lose the match. and it's going to be this big moment. Man, you stabbed me again and you still lost. Like, adds to their tension. We know Roman's going to come back at some point. Roman even mentioned tonight not being in the Battle Royal. That's all great. And it also adds to the Jay is furthering his own, like, I'm right because he won this Battle Royal and he's getting this opportunity. So when he loses, and he's even more frustrated because he just thought he was right and now he isn't. The part that I agree with is it feels like so obvious that Punk is going to win. And I almost like I can't imagine Jay winning this match. LA winning the Battle Royal, we have that like mystique of I don't know, maybe LA does win it. Maybe they do a short little LA Knight title run. Now, LA Knight can still get involved or have a title shot right after, whatever. Obviously, things could still be at play. But just speaking from tonight, I thought LA was going to win, and I would go into Saturday night's main event being like, man, this really might be 50-50. This really might be a 51-49 kind of matchup. Jay wins it, and I'm like, all right, story wise, you're getting somewhere. But like logic wise, this feels like a 90-10 right now that Punk is going to
Hmm.
win.
Yeah, it feels pretty obvious. My counterpoint is kind of like Jay eliminated Jimmy in LA, sure. What if Jay eliminated Jimmy and Dom and then LA eliminated Jay? It still would have been the same point that like Jay eliminated Jimmy. How could you do that to me? You know?
No, 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 but he has to win the match to get that like, hey man, I know what I'm doing. I fucking won. Like if he eliminates Jimmy and loses, it's just more of Jimmy, what are you doing? You're screwing me over.
Yeah, but then
Him
there's
winning the match being like, yeah, but I won. I know what I'm doing. I'm fucking gonna get the world title.
there's still Roman coming back. You don't know what you're doing clearly. You eliminated your brother and you lost the match. Like I think you could kind of tell it either way. I just think, and listen, we booked that J run. We're very big proponents of the J Rumble win, the title at Mania, so on and so forth. We call it how we see it. Jay lost the title. It's been a little bit of a slow roll with Jay for a while. He's been kind of going down on the pecking order, we'll say, in terms of should be champions coming up. And LA is still in that bubble of like, are you ever gonna do it with LA at this point? What does LA go and do now? Now you got Jimmy and Jay feuding, Roman, whatever, Punk and Jay. LA can get involved, I guess, still, but like now it feels like LA is just down a leg. Like I don't feel like there is much room for him to squeeze in there. Yeah, maybe after Saturday Night's Main Event, he finds his way into a title feud against Punk, somebody. I don't know. Again, they can prolong Braun and Bronson, but I feel like they kind of missed with LA and Jay right here. I think you still could have told the same story had Jay lost the Battle Royal, still eliminates Jimmy. There's still something to be told there. And LA getting the match with Punk, more hype for the main event of Saturday Night's main event, assuming it's the main event. I imagine Cody might also defend the belt. We'll see. But, I just think I'm not saying Jay's run his course. He's still one of the top dogs. But I think Jay in the title match right now has run its course. I think he needs to kind of be built back up a little bit.
Sorry, Richie is
He's joining in.
meowing away looking for attention. Uh, I would agree on the Roman part if Roman wasn't kind of furthering Jay. Like it would make
Yeah, but
sense.
that's kind of my point in it is like, like I am trying to teach you. And like, what have I taught? You're not listening, kind of, like you
No,
just
but
fucked up.
he's proving Jay he's Jay's proving him right. Like he wants
Yeah,
Jay to become the
yeah,
world champion and he wins that match. He's going to get that confirmation from Roman like, "Yes, you did it. You did
for
the right
sure.
thing.
I could just see it.
You did what you had to do."
I can see it going like the doubt kind of storyline. Like Roman is doubting Jay because Jay kind of like now can't get it done again, Again, they could have gone 100 fucking routes with any of these stories. Don't get me wrong. The bigger point is I just think you're missing with LA here. Again, at what point are you gonna ever do it with that guy? I don't know if they're ever going to now. There was a time period where I said slow roll it with LA. It's not time. It's not time. It's not time. Now it is. Now it is. Now it is. And they haven't done it in that window of it being time for LA.
Well, what makes it even harder is I do think there's a good chance we get Punk versus LA, say at a Survivor Series,
Hmm.
but then it's like, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed are going to be right into the title picture. I wouldn't be shocked if it's a case of LA Knight seems close, like he's about to win, and Braun Breaker gets involved, and he's the one who ends up becoming champion, and they go into the Braun Breaker reign, whatever. It's like LA Knight seemed to be so high on the pecking order of chances to become world champion. And as crazy as it sounds, Rollins gets hurt, and you would think it would elevate his odds, but it seems to have decreased his odds
Yeah, yeah.
because he was one of the prime guys to probably beat Rollins at some point, whatever. So it's like actually funny how it works where you'd think, all right, Rollins gets hurt. Odds are LA's got a better chance at winning it. I left Raw thinking, well, no, he's got an even less chance at winning it. So I do think though we get Punk LA in a story for the world title. But I just don't see LA Knight beating Punk for the title. And on top of it, I don't see Punk holding the belt for like 3 weeks or a month to drop it to LA Knight with this like quick kind of shift that they got going on. Because you got to start thinking Mania. I'd be stunned if LA Knight walked into Mania as World Heavyweight Champion. That feels like a
Mhm.
maybe Punk still has it. Maybe we're in the Braun Breaker title reign by that point. It just doesn't seem like that's going to be a possibility for LA.
I do agree. I don't predict him going into Mania champion, but I think in this window from now till Mania, that was your opportunity to put the belt on somebody fresh, have a little bit of a fresh storyline. You could still put it on Punk by Mania, whatever. I've been saying this for 2 months now. I still think you turn LA heel. I think that's the way. If you have him and Punk feud, I think you almost have to turn LA heel. And, they got Braun and Bronson, the big bads. But without Seth, Raw is still kind of missing a big bad guy right now. Maybe there is a heel turn imminent for somebody, and it makes sense in a way for it to be LA Knight. But I do feel for LA. I feel like he is the counterpart to Drew McIntyre on SmackDown. These are two guys that Drew's done it, at least, don't get me wrong. But these are two guys that are just right there, always right there. And Drew maybe even has more time left than LA in the grand scheme of it all. But are they ever going to pull the trigger? I really don't know.
LA is the prime example of always the bridesmaid,
Hmm.
never the bride. Drew has
Yeah,
been the bride. Now, his wedding didn't have as many people there.
there's a rain delay,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but he's been the bride. The Rumble win, his engagement
electric.
party was the party to be at.
Yeah,
LA's never even had that. He's never
yeah,
even got down on one knee.
yeah,
Like he,
yeah,
he
yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, he might have, but they said no.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
denied
he
him.
and
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
awkward, and it was
yeah,
awkward for
yeah.
everybody. They said no, but they were like, "But I still want a date. I
Hmm.
don't want to break up, but I just don't want to get married."
Yeah, you look at SmackDown, how fresh SmackDown was, and again, Raw was great tonight, especially in comparison to how it's been. But it feels like you have the injury to Seth Rollins. This is your chance to really spice it up, and they did with the Vision turning on Rollins. Double down on that, though. I think I love CM Punk. CM Punk is world champion. Take my money. Don't get me wrong, but I think LA being in that mix really adds another layer to it where you just never know what's going to happen. I would have loved to see that, but it still could. Like you said, I do kind of predict them maybe having a Survivor Series match. War Games looks to be SmackDown factions, MFT, White Six, so on and so forth. So it leaves Raw kind of up in the air, for Survivor Series. So LA versus Punk for the World Championship. Maybe the story is something along the lines of Pierce just won't give the shot to Braun and Bronson. They can't get the shot. Hell, maybe that match doesn't even end in a pinfall. Those guys come out and just wreck the two of them. But I'm looking forward to it, though. Saturday night's main event. The main event might be a little predictable now with Jay and Punk, but I still think it's going to be a fun show. Survivor Series, a lot of questions in the air without Seth Rollins. So it might not be as electric on paper, but more things might happen than they would have if Seth was still around.
Yeah, Raw was really good.
Hmm.
Even you had Stephanie Vaquer appear. We had the goat Nikki Bella come and make the save.
The goat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
had another Intercontinental title match that we mentioned: Becky Lynch and Maxine Dupree ending in DQ. But there's one last thing I want to talk about that I teased earlier from the Battle Royal. Am I putting pieces together here, or is this a reach? Could Finn and JD being eliminated by Sheamus and then coming back to eliminate him and clearly starting something there be the first step to Sheamus winning the Intercontinental Championship for the first time? Because Finn and JD lost their tag titles from Dom and him putting them in a spot they didn't want to be in. Now, I'm not saying this is coming in a week. I'm not saying this is coming in 2 weeks. But could this be that first breadcrumb of the story making its way down to Sheamus
You know,
finally getting the Grand Slam?
it absolutely could. Sheamus has got to win that belt eventually. And this Dom title run has been great. Dom has been so goddamn good that you can't just like have Dom lose the title to anybody, if we're being honest. There's only two names that really come to mind for me that should beat Dom, and it's Sheamus or Penta. Love Rusev. He's been great since he returned. He's a heel. Dom's kind of a heel still. Like I think the bigger moment is Penta getting the win or Sheamus finally getting his IC title win over Dom. I think the crowd will go electric for a guy like Sheamus. Is it too soon to book out though? I don't know. Dom might go into Survivor Series Intercontinental Champion still, so I guess not. We'll see. But I do predict Dom loses the title by the Rumble. I still think they want Liv involved for the Judgment Day, so I wouldn't be surprised if this gets dragged out till Mania and we get Finn versus Dom to some degree, WrestleMania, Liv versus Raquel, Roxanne, whatever the hell they end up doing. But Sheamus versus Dom IC title, I mean, I'm cool with it. I ain't arguing.
Yeah, I love that being the thought. It's also someone that's going to get cheered even if Dom loses, which obviously he's going to get cheered. One last note on Dom. I do love that they're giving him a few more title defenses because he went that long stretch. I know he had the injury, whatever, but he went that long stretch with like not defending the title at all. Now it's like three title defenses in the last like what month and a half.
Yeah.
Like, so I like that they're getting back into the groove with Dom. We missing anything?
You mentioned Stephanie, tag titles, IC titles, Vision, Battle Royal. I think that's it.
I think you need to subscribe or you're a coward.
I think that too.